One thing I have to ask the three of you, because I have both scientists and philosophers on this panel, is I have to ask about why so many physicists are bashing philosophers these days. So, to give you a few examples, Stephen Hawking, in his last book, said that philosophy is dead because it hasn't kept up with developments in physics. Lawrence Krauss and Neil deGrasse Tyson, other high-profile physicists, have made cutting remarks about philosophy, especially philosophy of science. And basically, they say this is, just sort of, it's not dealing with the real world. And David, you've been in the middle of this debate. Why is there this?
Philosophy's dead? Then what am I taking this class then? God. But you know what? I think he's wrong. You want to know why I think he's wrong? Because I said so. I think philosophy is alive and well. But do you want to know who's not alive and well? Let me tell you. Stephen Hawking.
Now, all jokes aside, I genuinely think philosophy is alive. And in this video, me and my colleagues will explain the possible arguments that Stephen Hawking may have on why philosophy is dead. And each of us will provide an explanation on why we think philosophy is alive. So, let's get started. Our first argument. Philosophy is dead because science produces ideas and provides us with quick answers regarding the modern world, leading people to believe that philosophy does not provide answers or develop ideas about the modern world, making science more relevant and reliable in terms of finding solutions and recognizing that science evolves faster than philosophy. Hawking commits a logical fallacy. But what is a logical fallacy? Logical fallacies are flawed, deceptive, or false arguments that can be proven wrong with reasoning. Hawking commits this fallacy by undervaluing philosophers' contributions to modern society. This is informed by his conviction that philosophy has not progressed at the same rate as science and that philosophy is no longer important. This argument is untrue because philosophy is still relevant today in terms of critical thinking and answering questions that science cannot. It is also relevant in the business world. And the argument that Hawking made completely dissolves because he overlooks philosophy's long-term impact on the modern world. His reasoning is based on the premise that while one field is more progressive, the other is less important and less helpful, making philosophy irrelevant or, in other words, dead. Moving on, why is philosophy alive? Philosophy is alive because of the importance, influence, and relevance it has to this day. Its influence on critical thinking and business are all examples of the importance of philosophy today. Another example is answering topics that science cannot. Philosophy's influence on critical thinking can be seen in the way it poses crucial problems that cannot be answered with numbers and data, but only with the power of thinking. Questions like, why do we dream? Or, is there meaning to life? These types of questions challenge our brain and encourage us to improve our critical thinking skills, which are crucial for creativity and communication. Moving on, philosophy has an impact on the business world because people who wish to succeed in that field learn specific abilities that are typical in the discipline of philosophy. Being able to make convincing arguments, seeing through complicated challenges or situations, reviewing policies, and critically examining work and issues are some of the philosophical qualities useful and crucial in business. The ability of philosophy to address questions that science cannot is the final example that demonstrates the relevance and influence of philosophy. When individuals ask questions like, do we have free will, or can we really know everything? They will seek the advice of a person who studied philosophy, because scientists are unable to respond to these questions because you can't answer these questions with number, data, tests, and there is no definitive answer for these types of questions. Philosophical questions such as the two mentioned are still regularly asked today. And to sum up, philosophy is still alive and well today as a result of its continuing importance, influence, and relevance in a wide range of fields. So now I'm done. I'm going to pass it to my colleagues who are so smart, so kind, so talented, and so cute.
Thank you for the compliments, Eldrick, but I don't think philosophy has been dismantled just yet. But wait, look what's coming!
そんなあの壁は50メートルだぞ。やつだ。巨人だ。
Now moving on to our second argument.
Hello class, my name is Christian de Medeiros, and I'm going to start by deconstructing Stephen Hawking's argument against philosophy. Now, what exactly is Hawking's argument? Hawking's argument states that philosophy is dead because science gives us necessary objective answers while addressing the physical world, and philosophy answers non-essential subjective questions and deals with the conceptual world. Now, what is the fallacy in Hawking's argument? The fallacy that is committed in Hawking's argument is the black and white fallacy. Hawking's argument focuses solely on two things: science answering questions regarding the physical world, therefore making it more valid, and philosophy only answering questions regarding the conceptual world, therefore making it less important. This separation between science and philosophy that Hawking presents displays a black and white fallacy, as there are only two states that exist: right and wrong, or factual and fictitious. But in reality, with every concept there is an important realm of gray, where creativity, spirituality, and knowledge intermix. Hawking cannot claim that philosophy cannot give insight on necessary questions such as, why am I here? Why do I have a soul? And what is my purpose? Hawking believes that questions that science answers are more important as they apply to our physical world, one that we can see and make sense of, while the questions in philosophy that are addressed are less important because they apply to conceptual world, one that we cannot see, touch, or hear, which is therefore irrelevant. This is ironic, as disregarding the importance of philosophy is in turn a philosophical assertion. A philosophical position is taken when Hawking claims that philosophy is dead and that it is objectively correct. Science is more than just a collection of empirical evidence. It is also the kinds of questions we ask, the methods we use to answer them, and the conceptual frameworks we use to put them into action. The black and white fallacy invalidates Hawking's argument because of the important relationship between philosophy and science. This can be described as using Reichenbach's theory of the relationship between context of discovery and subsequently the context of justification. Philosophy is important because it allows for creative and inspired thinking, and science is then important to explain how these concepts can be physically true. Hawking generalizes the two fields excessively and does not see the fact that philosophy is necessary in answering simple everyday questions that we might have, or complex moral concepts that science cannot investigate. Now I'm going to argue a case in defense of philosophy. My argument is that philosophy is still alive as it continues to play an essential role in scientific research and theories. I'm going to utilize the following method of development: cause and effect and examples. Philosophy affects the basis of scientific research, the scientific method through the conceptualization of scientific hypotheses. Hypotheses are philosophical theories that scientists create and must then prove through scientific methods. The cause is the hypothesis and the effect is a scientific experiment and/or proof. Science answers questions objectively, however, in doing so, it uses a subjective process to create hypotheses, which allows for scientists to narrow down their findings. As we know, science depends on philosophy, and there are multiple examples that display this. For instance, Einstein's thought experiments. A thought experiment is a hypothetical situation in which a hypothesis is laid out for the purpose of thinking through its consequences. Thought experiments are often used to explore seemingly impossible situations and are an important part of scientific methodology. Now to briefly discuss one of Einstein's most famous thought experiments. At the age of 16, Einstein imagined himself chasing a beam of light. This use of imagination eventually led to the development of special relativity, E equals mc squared. A simple thought and implementation of his own imagination led to one of the greatest scientific discoveries in history. Philosophy 1, Hawking 0. Other examples would be the contributions of natural philosophy to science. Aristotle was the first great biologist. René Descartes was responsible for developing analytical geometry and discovered the laws of reflection and refraction. Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz laid claim to the invention of calculus. Immanuel Kant created a hypothesis known as the Kant-Laplace nebular hypothesis, which described his proposed version of the formation of the solar system. All of these examples prove that philosophy always has and will continue to assist science in new theories and discoveries. Thank you.
Oh, this is awkward. So my camera broke, unfortunately. Wow, I know what you're thinking. The presentation's finally over. Wrong, you have to sit through. My turn now. Well, this is Hawking's argument number 3. So, his third argument is that philosophy is dead because philosophy deals with subjective truths, or science deals with the objective truths. Now, he's wrong here, right? I disagree, so he's wrong. He uses not just one fallacy, 2 fallacies. It means he's twice as wrong, okay? He uses the black or white fallacy and the logical fallacy. Wow, I know what you're thinking. Wow, Hawking seems so smart. How did he commit 2 fallacies? Well, I'll show you. So he commits the black or white fallacy because the philosophy is subjective. I will give him that, but that's pretty obvious. I could think of that, and I'm doing this presentation here. But he doesn't realize that it's the subjectivity of philosophy that allows philosophers to debate and discuss different ideas to create new thoughts through combining different views. What Hawking didn't realize is that it's this very subjectivity that makes philosophy useful in breeding innovation towards science. This is how philosophy and science are intertwined. The second fallacy that Hawking commits is the logical fallacy. He commits this when he says that science gives objective answers. This isn't true because science also gives subjective answers, such as the scientific method. It's used in many different ways. The empiricism method, the rationalism method, and the experimental method are just 3 of a large amount of methods that scientists can use. This shows that science can be subjective, as there are different methods that can be used to figure out the answer. Now, scientific methods lead to scientific theories, right? Right. Okay. Some theories that were created were Earth was the center of the world, the Earth was only 40 million years old. These were all seen as true at one point, another time, but if you walked into a bar and said that to someone, they'd hit you over the head with a beer. Whereas a lot of philosophical theories have sustained themselves for so long, some up to thousands of years, despite being subjective, shows that subjectivity does not matter into whether something alive or dead. My argument in defense of philosophy is that philosophy is alive because there are many questions that scientists cannot answer, but philosophers are able to deliberate about. The method of development, which I think best suits this argument, is compare and contrast. Although philosophy may be used less than it once was, it does not mean that it's dead. Philosophy is alive because there are questions that science still cannot answer without the help of philosophy. There are questions that cannot be solved by just using science on its own. For example, if scientists were given a question about where people were before they were born, they would be unable to figure out the answer to the question. Whereas on the other hand, if a philosopher was given the exact same question, they would be able to develop an idea to figure out an explanation as to what happens. Philosophy uses logic to make an argument or to form an explanation when math and science are unable to solve the problem. Philosophy involves using only your mind to create the most logical answer.
Guys, don't listen to what my friends say, don't listen to what anybody else says. Stephen Hawking was right. Science aligns with our modern needs and desires. We don't need nor acknowledge philosophy or its research. The modern world has evolved with science and depends on science to survive. Humanity is not dependent on philosophy. It is so much less important than it was so many years ago. During this time of evolution and scientific discoveries, Philosophy has become less and less important, and it's faded out. Philosophy is dead. Wait, what is that? Guys, don't listen to him. I'm me from the future, and this time I've joined a nice group of men with nice black suits. Let me tell you, past me is wrong. He actually committed a fallacy, the strawman fallacy. The strawman fallacy is when one uses a complicated topic and oversimplifies and distorts the topic to make it seem like they're right. Let me explain. Saying that philosophy is dead due to science aligning with our modern needs and desires, so philosophy is no longer needed, oversimplifies the situation, creating a strawman fallacy. Science and philosophy stem from two different areas of study, stemming from pathos and logos over 1,000 years ago. The application of research between philosophy and science is completely different, as science relies on a complete product, while philosophy can change morals and understanding. So saying that humanity has evolved only rely on science, can disregard philosophy, oversimplifies and distorts the argument, making philosophy seem irrelevant. Not only did I come here to prove my past self wrong, I actually came here to defend philosophy. Let me elaborate. Many things in science are proven right and wrong. For example, in the late 19th century, an astronomer discovered that there was canals made by Martians on Mars. Later, when more modern technologies were invented, this theory was disproved to be an optical illusion on Mars. But what happens when something cannot be proven as right or wrong? What happens when it lies in this gray area instead? When this happens, a problem occurs. The solution to this problem is philosophy. If philosophy was truly dead, then these gray areas would have inexplicable solutions left as a mystery. With philosophy, the great truths of the scientific community can be broken down and examined. One popular model, the philosopher zombie, a particular case that the Men in Black and I, it's a new experiment that we've been trying. It's a case that involves one or more mysterious gray areas of science, the brain. Even with extensive research stemming back all the way from 17 BCE, there are many areas that scientists cannot grasp a full understanding of. In particular, why the brain creates people's consciousnesses, why the conscious experience happens at all. This is where philosophers are required. Here, at the Men in Black Institute, we have a new creation, the philosopher's zombie. The beginning of this experiment is to envision a zombie that is a clone of oneself. This zombie looks exactly the same without a shred of distinction, and it would be able to focus attention in various places, describe its surroundings, and behave in the exact same way the original person would if we put him in the exact same scenario. The only difference of the zombie is that the actions of the zombie do not have conscientious thoughts behind them, only instinct. The second step is that if someone is able to conceive the zombie and create it inside their head, how is the brain able to make the zombie in the first place? Something that cannot be explained in the world of science. Then, if the brain is able to effortlessly create something science cannot explain, what makes science qualified to explain the brain in the first place and how it works? How does the brain determine what conscientiousness should be? The reason philosophy is very much alive today is to answer these questions and to challenge the truths of the scientific reality. I'm afraid my time is up. Sadly, I must leave. You won't remember much of me, but you will remember the importance of philosophy. See you guys later.